Ethiopia, once proud and united under Solomonic emperors, had fallen into chaos. The crown became a symbol, not of power, but of paralysis. For nearly a century, warlords ruled the land raw as this, the Jazmak that carving the empire into pieces like scavengers over a fallen lion. But then, a shadow rose from the northern highlands. His name? Kasa Hailu, a brilliant tactician, a fierce warrior, and a man with fire in his eyes. He would become Emperor Tewodros II. In 1855, with the roar of cannon and the swing of his sword, Kasa seized the imperial title. No longer would emperors be puppets. No longer would warlords dictate the fate of the realm. Tewodros dreamed of more than power. He envisioned a modern, centralized Ethiopia. He sought unity not through negotiation, but conquest. But in his rise, enemies gathered. Nobles whispered. Foreigners watched. Who was this man who claimed divine rule? And could he truly tame the storm of centuries? This is the rebirth of empire, or perhaps the first flicker of a tragic flame. Emperor Tewodros II was not content with just wearing the crown. He sought to reshape the very bones of Ethiopia. He abolished the old feudal customs, crushed rebellious warlords, and dreamed of a modern state. He built roads, forged cannons, and summoned European advisors. The emperor even dreamed of a navy on a landlocked plateau. But there was a catch. Europe would not listen. Tewodros, eager to link arms with Christian powers, sent a letter to Queen Victoria. Silence. The silence became a wound. The wound festered into rage. So the emperor did the unthinkable. He imprisoned British diplomats. What followed was fire. In 1868, a British expeditionary force of 13,000 marched through Ethiopia, the might of an empire coming to break one man. At the mountain fortress of Magdala, Tewodros stood defiant. Surrounded, betrayed, and cornered by fate, he faced his final hour. Rather than surrender, he turned the pistol on himself. The emperor died with no crown on his head, only a dream burning beside him. But what did Britain take with them when they left Magdala? A man's body or a kingdom's soul? After Tewodros fell, chaos returned. But from the highlands of Shewa rose another giant, Menelik II, the lion-hearted emperor who would shake the world. He dreamed not just of unity, but of prestige. Ethiopia would modernize with railroads, telegraphs, imported weapons. But as Menelik built, another empire crept closer. Italy. At first, diplomacy. A treaty, the Treaty of Wuchale. Two versions, one in Italian, one in Amharic. But they did not say the same thing. In Amharic, Menelik agrees to friendship. In Italian, Ethiopia becomes a protectorate. A lie disguised as paper. Menelik refused, and the Empire of Italy prepared for war. They believed it would be easy, a colonial conquest like all the rest. But Ethiopia was not like the rest. In 1896, on the plains of Adwa, Menelik rallied over 100,000 warriors. Churches tolled their bells. Nobles arrived from every province. At dawn, spears met rifles. And history changed forever. The Italians were crushed. An African empire had defeated a European power in a pitched battle. For a moment, the world paused and watched. And Menelik, crowned in glory, stood as the emperor who rewrote the fate of a continent. After Adwa, Ethiopia basked in pride. But the storm was not over. Menelik grew old. Regions clashed. Intrigue brewed in the court like dark incense. And from that haze emerged a boy, Liege Tafari Makonnen. Sharp-eyed, cautious, dignified. Born of nobility, descendant of King Haile Selassie of Shewa. He watched the empire from the shadows, learning, listening. While others paraded swords, Tafari wielded ideas. He read Western books, learned languages, spoke with emissaries. Modernity whispered to him. When Menelik died, the throne passed hands like a candle in a storm to Empress Uditu, a monarch of tradition. Tefari became her regent, but power was not given, it was taken, slowly, deliberately. Railways stretched, schools opened, newspapers began to print, and then a crown. In 1930, Tefari was crowned Emperor Haile Selassie I, King of Kings, elect of God. His coronation dazzled the world. Journalists from Europe and America watched, mouths agape. He spoke of unity, of law, of the rights of man. But in the far north, in Italy, Mussolini listened not in awe, but in envy. A lion had risen, and another beast was stirring. As Haile Selassie's star rose, so too did the envy of empires. In the marble halls of Rome, Benito Mussolini dreamed of conquest. He longed for a second Roman Empire, and Ethiopia, uncolonized, proud, stood in his way. The world applauded Haile Selassie's reforms, but few truly listened when he warned, "A storm is coming." In secret, Italy stockpiled weapons, modern tanks, poison gas, thousands of troops, while Ethiopia's warriors still bore spears and rifles from decades past. Along the border of Eritrea, tensions smoldered, skirmishes flared. Then the Wall incident, a remote oasis, Ethiopian patrols, Italian soldiers. Shots fired, blood spilled on the sand. Italy claimed provocation. The League of Nations issued words, not action. Haile Selassie stood before the world calm, regal, and pleaded for justice. It is us today, it will be you tomorrow. But the world turned away. In 1935, Mussolini gave the order. The skies over Tigray darkened with warplanes. The sound of engines drowned out the hymns of the highlands. Ethiopia, once victorious, would now face a mechanized monster. The last African empire was under siege. The sky rained death. Italian bombers screamed across the highlands, dropping poison and fire. Villages burned, churches crumbled, and yet Ethiopia did not kneel. From the valleys of Gondar to the mountains of Timbian, warriors rose. Some were nobles, others were farmers, but all were patriots. They fought with courage, but faced tanks, aircraft, mustard gas. Emperor Haile Selassie, knowing he could not win a conventional war, made a heart-wrenching decision. He left his kingdom to save it. Into exile he went not in defeat, but with purpose. In Geneva, he stood before the League of Nations, a solitary lion in a den of cowards. You turned your backs on justice, he thundered. Today it is us. Tomorrow it will be you. His words echoed through history, but the world remained silent. Ethiopia was declared an Italian colony. Fascist flags flew over Addis Ababa. But in the shadows, the Arbonok, the patriots, rose. Guerrilla fighters struck from caves, forests, and hilltops. They were outgunned, outnumbered, but never outwilled. And far away, in exile, Haile Selassie waited. Waiting for a crack in the empire's armor. Waiting for the lion's return. In 1935, the storm returned. Italy, under Mussolini's fascist regime, launched a full-scale invasion, this time with tanks, warplanes, and poison gas. The Ethiopian highlands echoed with the rumble of machines, and villages burned under foreign fire. But the spirit of resistance did not break. Ethiopian soldiers, armed with little more than courage and outdated rifles, took to the mountains. They fought for every valley, every river, every sacred church. In the skies, chemical warfare rained down mustard gas, choking the land and its people. No mercy, no law, only conquest. As the enemy advanced, Emperor Haile Selassie stood firm, his regalia stained by war, his eyes burning with sorrow and resolve. But even a lion cannot hold back the tide alone. Addis Ababa fell. The Lion of Judah was forced into exile. From London, under gray skies and quiet dignity, the emperor prepared his next battle not with bullets, but with words. He traveled to the League of Nations, standing before the world to plead for justice. Today it is us, he warned. Tomorrow it will be you. His voice echoed through the halls of diplomacy, but the response was silence, too slow, too soft, too late. Ethiopia was occupied. Fascist banners flew where the cross once stood. But the soul of a nation cannot be conquered. In the hills, patriots sharpened their blades. The flame of resistance still burned. The emperor may have been in exile, but the war for Ethiopia had only just begun. World War II changed the fate of nations, and Ethiopia's hour had come. In exile, Haile Selassie waited. From a quiet room in England, surrounded by maps and letters from his scattered patriots, the emperor plotted his return. The wounds of invasion had not healed, but the fire of resistance still burned. In the highlands, the Arbegnok Ethiopia's patriot Shad never surrendered. Waging guerrilla war from the mountains, they defied occupation with ancient rifles and unbreakable spirit. And across the desert, a new alliance formed. British forces, now locked in war with Mussolini's Italy, joined hands with the exiled emperor. Together, they prepared to strike. In 1941, the Lion of Judah roared again. From the borderlands of Sudan to the gates of Addis Ababa, the tide turned. Ethiopian patriots and British troops moved as one. Italian forces crumbled, retreating as the empire they tried to claim collapsed around them. And then triumph. Haile Selassie returned to his capital, not as a fugitive, but as a liberator. Crowds flooded the streets, flags waved, bells rang. After 5 long years, the emperor rode through a free Addis Ababa once more. But beneath the celebration lay scars, villages burned, families broken, dreams deferred. The trauma of occupation lingered like smoke over the highlands. Reclaiming the throne was only the beginning. The emperor resumed his rule. Yet the world had changed, and so had Ethiopia. A crossroads had been reached. The question was no longer survival, but transformation. Could this ancient kingdom modernize fast enough? Could it educate, rebuild, and rise in a post-war world? The war was over, but a new struggle had begun, the struggle to shape Ethiopia's future. The 1950s and 60s, the empire stood tall, but trembled beneath its weight. Haile Selassie, now a statesman of global stature, brought Ethiopia to the world stage. He addressed the United Nations with dignity and vision. He championed African unity, hosting leaders from across the continent. To many abroad, Ethiopia looked like a rising empire, independent, sovereign, and proud. At home, the emperor pressed forward with reforms. Schools were built in rural villages. Hospitals rose from dusty plains. A new generation filled classrooms, learning to dream beyond the horizon. But progress cast long shadows. In the countryside, women still walked miles for water. Fields lay dry, and hunger lingered. The nobility feasted in the capital while peasants toiled in silence. In Addis Ababa's lecture halls, a restless youth stirred. They studied the world and began to question their own justice, land, voice. Their demands grew louder, bolder, unstoppable. Journalists lit candles in the dark, typing stories no one dared print. Farmers murmured in frustration. The old ways were no longer enough. Even as modern cars roared through city streets, donkey carts still rolled beside them. The empire straddled 2 worlds fast and future uncertain of which it truly belonged to. Haile Selassie remained the symbol of unity, but unity was fraying. Beneath the pageantry, tension brewed. And high in the mountains, a lone figure watched the horizon not with triumph, but with unease. The empire had survived invasion. It had reclaimed its throne. But now, it faced something even more dangerous. Change? By the early 1970s, the shadows grew long across the land. In the palace, Haile Selassie sat in silence, staring through the window of a changing world. Once hailed as a liberator, a unifier, a symbol of pride now, questions echoed louder than applause. To the north, famine carved lines into the faces of farmers. Cracked earth replaced once fertile fields. In the cities, students marched with banners held high. Justice, reform. Their voices were peaceful, but their meaning thundered. Mothers rationed food in flickering candlelight. Nobles, once secure in their privilege, watched unrest unfold on television screens, their faces marked by uncertainty. Ethiopia was waking up and the old world was slipping away. The emperor, now in his final years, turned to faith. In the sacred stillness of the cathedral, incense rising like memory, he prayed for his people, for peace, for time. But time does not wait. In the dead of night, a hand scrawled words across a wall. Change is coming. And it was. The empire had stood for decades against colonizers, against time itself. But now, it trembled from within. The storm had arrived. Haile Selassie's reign was nearing its end. His crown, once the pride of a continent, could no longer hold back the tide. And yet, Ethiopia did not end. Her rivers still ran, her mountains still stood, her churches still whispered ancient hymns, and her youth bold, scarred, unbroken, looked toward the rising sun. The last crown would fall, but the story of Ethiopia was only just beginning.